Blessed to be with you, Kevin Miller in the morning. Thank you for joining us so early in the morning on 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Don't forget, coming up Friday, Girls with Guns, Independence Indoor Shooting. We'll be back in Adam in action and having a great time. Hope to see you there and in Meridian, Idaho. Stop by, fire off some weapons, have a good time. And if you know a girl with a gun or you're a girl with a gun, time to enter our Girls with Guns competition. More details on KIDOTalkRadio.com or the KIDO Talk Radio app. Joining us now, you may have seen him, his numerous appearances on Fox News. He's a Fox News contributor. You might have read his work in the Washington Times. You might catch him on Fox News Sunday, which you can catch right here on KIDO Talk Radio. Charles Hurt joins us. Mr. Hurt, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Kevin. Good to be with you.
The author of Still Winning, Why America Went All In on Donald Trump and Why We Must Do It Again. Before we get rolling, I've got to ask you, in your previous life, you were the editor of the Drudge Report. That's like a secret society. Can you give us a glimpse inside what that was like, sir?
It's funny. It is sort of like a secret society. But it was, it was a lot of fun. I did it for about 5 years. Matt Drudge is he's a true genius. I don't say that about many people, but truly somebody who thinks unlike anybody I've ever been around. And of course, it's revealed on the front page of his website every day. It's why it's the most trafficked news website on the planet.
Indeed. Not everybody gets to do that. And we can remember Matt Drudge from the early days, even when he had his radio show and never...
That's right.
He's almost like, the topic of your book is Donald Trump and why people are drawn to him, but he's almost like the anti-Trump, I would say, because he just is a very mysterious young man.
Very mysterious, very enigmatic, but I've never known anyone who loves the freedom of the press more than he does, and I think that is more than anything. That love of the news is what animates him more than anything else.
And Mr. Hurt, what drew you to writing? Everybody, most of us can read, thankfully, that's quite a responsibility. The older I get, the more I appreciate writers. That not only do you put pen to paper, but you make us think.
As a buddy of mine back home says, most of us learn how to write and then we go on and do something different. It's true. But for some reason, what got me into the business was I just have always wanted to work for newspapers. I love newspapers, have since I was a little boy. And so it was very easy for me to get into my first job was working for the Detroit News out in Detroit. And as they say, that's a great news town. I covered the city, covered politics there, covered crime, covered the fire department. It was and for a kid out of college, you couldn't have asked for anything more fun than that.
No, Detroit News, still one of America's great papers. Still winning, Why America Went All In on Donald Trump and Why We Must Do It Again. Charles Hurt joining us from the Washington Times and Fox News. So, what was it like for you as currently you're the opinion editor of the Washington Times in addition to your million other jobs, but watching this phenomenon, not only as a commentator or reporter, but as an observer, did you sense this was happening? Obviously, you're writing about it in this book, this whole cultural phenomena that has become our president.
Yeah, it's really amazing. I remember sitting in my office when he came down the glass escalator and began that speech. And a lot of people in the news business were kind of shocked by the way he spoke. But what I in describing what was wrong with the country and what needed to be done and how these problems needed to be addressed, and what was astonishing to me was how scaldingly honest he was, and it was unlike any other politician that I'd ever covered. And from that first moment, as he began sort of changing the language of the way politics was going to be discussed in that campaign, he began taking the advantage, and then he never stopped. And if you look back at it, and I think one of the things that of the really smart things that he did was he's running for the Republican nomination, and the first thing he did was he went after establishment Republican politicians. And I think there were a lot of conservatives around the country who leapt to their feet and cheered because, of course, they had years and decades of frustration pent up towards exactly those establishment Republican politicians who'd been ignoring so many of the important problems that conservatives care about. And then it wasn't until he thwarted whatever it was, 18 or 17 of the Republican candidates that he turned his fire on Democrats and was just as effective against the Democrats as he had been against the Republicans.
Indeed. And now, I mean, I can't do this justice, Mr. Hurt, but I'm going to read a little from your book so people understand the type of writing they're getting when they buy Still Winning. And, this is from Romney's House of Rhino Losers. If you really hate Donald Trump, you're probably not reading this book. You're not among the legions of loony lefties that have hijacked the Democratic Party and dragged it over the cliff of socialism, nor are you among the small, smug, but incredibly powerful and self-satisfied fat cat Republicans in Washington, known as the establishment, also known as rhinos, which stands for Republicans in name only. The rhinos are a staple of political geldings who call themselves conservative and Republican, but do not actually represent the interest of conservative or Republican voters around the country. And one more sentence here. Instead, they are passive eunuchs who serve diligently in the court of Democrats. That's very creative, but very accurate.
Sadly, it is, and it's very troubling because, of course, we've seen this going back, 10 years with the Tea Party. What the Tea Party began, in a lot of ways, Donald Trump has sort of finished. The Tea Party had lots of successes, did a whole lot to sort of cleanse the Republican Party of a lot of the sort of worst of those rhino fake conservatives that were representing conservatives in Washington. And it cleansed a lot of those, but it didn't finish it. And I think in so many ways, and what I think is so interesting about Donald Trump is, of course, he's not like a conservative the way we think of conservatives. He's basically a sort of common sense. He's a builder, and he looks at things through the eyes of sort of the common sense eyes of somebody who builds buildings. And he says, okay, we have this problem. We have millions of illegals living in the country. We have hundreds of thousands of illegals streaming across the border and children are being dragged because as pawns being smuggled across the border. We need to do something about that. You don't have to be a stark raving right-wing conservative to arrive at that conclusion. You just have to be sane and common sense. And the fact that Donald Trump is up against, especially these Democrats today, who are so hell-bent on preventing him from fixing, even admitting that there's a crisis at the border, it's truly astonishing. It's a sad place we find our country today.
Charles Hurt joining us, Still Winning, Why America Went All In on Donald Trump and Why We Must Do It Again, with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Mr. Hart, let's get back to the press. Why? I mean, I've had a chance to see where you go in for Fox News Sunday, been to the Big Fox a couple times there. Same place as C-SPAN, same place as NBC, MSNBC, their bureau there. Why do your colleagues, and I say that with parentheses, in the media hate him so much that they seemingly lose their mind? You're much closer to it than we are. It doesn't seem logical the way they attack him all the time. It's almost if they're playing into his strength.
I think you're exactly right, Kevin. I think they are absolutely playing into his strength. But I honestly, I hate to say it, but I think that the real the seed of their contempt for him is all about style. They hate his style. They hate the way he talks. They hate the way he goes about dealing with things. They hate the way he talks. And this is the thing that sort of keeps me going every day. And that is that, that's the contempt they have for Donald Trump. Well, that's also the contempt they have for regular Americans in this country, Americans who go to work every day, who provide for their family every single day, who would do anything to defend their neighbors. these are good people, and they're what make America great in the first place. And I think that so many of these professional quote unquote journalists covering politics in Washington today, they don't know any of these people because they just don't know them, and second of all, they have absolute contempt for them. And I think it's truly despicable. And to look at the way the press has given up, major newspapers that I grew up reading and loving, like the New York Times and the Washington Post, they've given up all pretense of even pretending to cover this guy fairly or even cover this guy honestly. It's really a very troubling thing. And they've lost all credibility certainly in my eyes, but also in the eyes, I think, of regular Americans.
Charles Hurt joining us. A couple more questions for him here. KIDO Talk Radio with Kevin Miller. You write about this, though, in page 81 when you go back to Barack Obama, Reverend Wright, saying, imagine if Donald Trump's personal preacher of 30 years had said such racially incendiary things. To the greater question, the greater media disservice that they do when they'll give former President Obama a pass on this, they're crazily aggressive on President Trump. And recently when you had Congresswoman Cortez making these false allegations that go unchallenged, you're there at the highest levels. How does that impact our republic?
I think it's absolutely devastating. And I think, and this whole idea that you have a Democratic Party that runs on this, they call it identity politics, which is all that it's a code word for racial politics, where they slice and dice the American electorate by race, religion, gender, and then they pit everybody against one another. And they do this, and they do it openly. The Democratic Party makes no apologies about it. They do it openly, and they admit it. And that, I think, that is a large part of why they want to make up that they're playing so much politics with the border, is because it fits right into their racial identity politics that they like to play. And of course, Republicans over the past 10, 15 years have been cowed by these Democrats who whip this cudgel out and beat them up by calling them a racist for any reason under the sun. Donald Trump is the first guy who just turned back and said, "Screw you, I'm not a racist," and stood up to him. And to me, that is the most important step towards finally silencing these people on the left who want to divide America by race. And it is nothing short of blatant racism, and it should be condemned as hotly when Democrats do it today as when nasty racists did it in the past.
Charles Hurt joining us. One final question from the author of Still Winning on KIDO Talk Radio. What do you make of the liberalization, the politicization of sports, particularly now you've got the U.S. national team dropping the flag? We're not going to the blanking White House. Now they're going to go hang out in the Senate with Chuck Schumer. And the president seemingly, and again, not a social conservative, but a champion of traditional American values nonetheless, being the only seemingly voice of sanity. And now you've got the women's team. Well, I don't know, sir. Mr. Hurt, you're a writer. You'll describe it better than I can.
It's really baffling, Kevin. I can't explain it, but it has something to do with these the women's soccer team. They're wonderful athletes, and it's thrilling that they won. It's great. I'm not much of a soccer fan, but I'm thrilled that they. I love watching great athletes do amazing things. But I can't help but think that they've been sort of they've been brainwashed by this leftist cult in our country, led by people like Congresswoman Cortez, who you rightly point out completely went to the border and completely lied about what she saw down there. And they get brainwashed by it so that they think every corner of American life should be politicized. And so when the president says something nice about these people, they snap back and respond with nastiness. And I can't help but think that they've just sort of been their brains have been hijacked by this socialist cult. And I don't think that it represents. It certainly doesn't represent the mainstream of American voters. I don't even think it represents the mainstream of Democratic voters that I know. They're not in for this stuff. All it does is it excites this little sliver, this extreme sliver on the left that wants free health care for illegals and free everything else.
Mr. Hurt, we appreciate you. Great job. We highly recommend the book, Still Winning, and can't wait for your next appearance on Fox News, sir.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Really enjoyed it.
All right, Charles Hurt joining us, Still Winning. And we're going to share with you a couple excerpts of this book. And if I got a little fanboy with you, I'm sorry about that. But when you read someone who can write well, or like I like to say, writes good, it just changes your life. And in the world that we live in today, how many of us ever read as much as we should? You know, you want to talk about expanding your mind. And yes, YouTube is a wonderful thing. And videos are wonderful to learn from. But to really increase your knowledge, nothing like grabbing a good book. Or if you're down with the digital stuff, a digital download. Me, I like to download the articles and go through those things. But, I mean, my goodness gracious. And when you read something like this, instead, they are passive eunuchs who are serving diligently in the court of Democrats, talking about the rhinos. I mean, this is, even if it is true, but the brilliance of it is the creativity of the description. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Living the dream, Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Coming up, hey, Paulette Jordan's documentary is going to be premiering at the Egyptian Theater. Will anybody outside of the lefty loons go to see it? Probably not. But this issue concerning the decree by the big three, the Ada County commissioners, they're going to raise your property taxes. We're going to talk about that, get your reaction coming up. And it's glad to see that the area, including Indian Creek Plaza, they're rallying behind Chicken Dinner Road. Some people rally behind the flag. Other people rally behind their sports team. But in Idaho, we proudly rally around Chicken Dinner Road. PETA, keep your hands off our chicken dinner. Kevin Miller in the morning, traffic and weather together on KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Sometimes it's tough to keep a straight face. Good morning, Dave. Kevin Miller in the morning here. One more time, if you didn't hear the brilliance of Charles Hurt in this book, Still Winning. If you really hate Donald Trump, you're probably not reading this book. You're not among the legions of loony lefties that have hijacked the Democratic Party and dragged it over the cliff of socialism, nor are you among the small, smug, but incredibly powerful and self-satisfied fat cat Republicans in Washington known as the establishment, also known as rhinos, which stands for Republicans in name only. The rhinos are a stable of political geldings who call themselves conservative and Republican, but do not actually represent the interest of conservative or Republican voters around the country. I love this. Geldings. Who uses geldings? Who uses eunuchs in modern language? Instead, they are passive eunuchs who serve diligently in the court of Democrats. They put up fights from time to time, but are always dutifully losing and quietly going back to being loyal eunuchs in the court of Democratic Washington. Dang. Coming up next, are you ready to pay more taxes for a new jail, a new DMV, and a new, well, I don't know, where do they put the dead people? The coroner's place? Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Good morning, Maggie. Joining us now, Tanya J. Powers, Fox News Radio. And not to be confused with this weekend's Snake River Stampede Parade in Nampa. She's live at the ticker tape parade for the U.S. Women's National Team. Good morning.
Good morning.
How's the crowd?
They're pretty lively, especially for 9:37 in the morning. It looks like, I told Dave Anthony at the top of the hour, this looks like a 4th of July redo. If you had another one a week later, this is what it would look like. There are American flags. There are people with, red, white, and blue on, a lot of that. They have signs. They have their favorite women's team players' jerseys on. I mean, it is very festive and quite well attended, especially, like I said, for an early morning parade.
Early morning, indeed. It's amazing. Is it amazing the amount of people that come out, considering we're talking about the women's soccer team? We're not talking about the your favorite team, the Mets or the Yankees or whatever you people like up there.
Well, speaking of the Yankees, the women's team actually becomes the only other team besides the Yankees to have a back-to-back ticker tape parade, which is, like I said, quite a big deal for the women's team. They had one of these, of course, in 2015, and this one, of course, is the next one. There was a couple of like test runs a minute ago of ticker tape. Oh, I can see people are throwing a little bit out right now, but the parade it's actually underway as of about 8 minutes ago. It was supposed to kick off at 9:30 down at Battery Park and then come straight up Broadway, which is the Canyon of Heroes. That is where I'm standing right now, is right on Broadway and right in front of City Hall. So when they finish, they will get up to this point. You may hear the chanting in the background, USA. They will go to City Hall. There's a big rally that's scheduled on the steps of that, where they will give them the keys to the city by Mayor Bill de Blasio. So that is kind of what's about to happen here.
Well, we don't want you to continue to be lost in the moment, so we will graciously bid you adieu. And I'm just here for you, Kevin.
Well,
I'm glad they're calling it soccer, not football, because we all know what the real football is. Tanya J. Powers.
Oh, yes, we do, actually. And I refuse to have that discussion with anybody here, because I'm pretty sure I would be shouted down about the meaning of the true meaning of football.
Yes, ma'am. And one more quick, unrelatable thing to everybody but you and me, and I'm selfishly saying this: SEC Media Days begin next week, sister.
Woo! I'm excited. I'm as excited for that as I am today, which, like I said, is pretty exciting to be out here too. So.
That's what we call fair and balanced.
That's right.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sure, thank you.
Our great friend Tanya J. Powers, Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. So, recently, Ada County figured out, how to take your money. Isn't that what this is about? And I don't want you to misinterpret these comments, but whether it's the Canyon County commissioners or the people that backed like the jail 75 times in Canyon County, they're going, man, we need to get these foregone taxes to help us pay for the jail that's not going to happen in Canyon County. They have one meeting recently, and all of a sudden, all of us are going to pay $4.5 million to improve the jail, to improve everything else, and to raise our taxes. If you live in Ada County, if you live in Canyon County, go, peace out, man. Well, at least we vote on our things. Gem County, same thing. Boise County, same thing. You just think to yourself, what's going on in Ada County? Well, they did elect 2 Democrats, right? So we'll get to that story in a minute at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. I know the Ada County Sheriff, great guy, great young man, getting ready to run for re-election, believes in this. We were tipped off, 3 or 4 months ago when we said to you, hey, they're going to build a new jail, or they're going to want money to expand the existing jail. Be warned, wasn't anybody else. It was the talk station that did that. But does anybody else have a problem with this, where they have a meeting, they have public sentiment, and then they go, boom, we're going to fund a jail, a new coroner's office, and a second driver's license office? Okay, maybe we need all that. But do you think if you were given the opportunity to vote that you would have approved it?
I walked in here, to be honest with you, completely neutral. I wanted to see what was going to be said. We're in trouble. Commissioners, we got our coroners up to our eyeballs, literally in death. This is ridiculous. These are our family members, our neighbors. What are we doing?
I think there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be having problems. And I have elderly neighbors who complain that they are exceedingly worried that they will have to be forced out of their homes.
Yeah. You know, if we accomplish one thing before our time is done here, it's really to make a positive difference. And people can accuse you of believing your gimmick. But we do make a difference. You know, I had a couple people come in and go, hey, what's this spoken word stuff about? This is Idaho. This is how America used to be. I'd like to think that this program is how radio used to be, about making a difference. You have people that will be forced out of their homes because already the taxes are going up. Hey, I made $100,000 on my home. I don't have a place to live. Perhaps Homedale or Parma or Fruitland or Emmett until the expansion goes there. To me, do we need a new jail? Probably. Do we need a new DMV? Probably. Do we need a new coroner's office? I guess. A lot of people are dying. Thankfully, it's not you or me yet. But is this any way to do it, to put on these secret taxes? Whatever happened to representative local government? Gary in Boise with Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Gary.
Hey, good morning. Hey, I'm not indicating, as you mentioned, that whether we do or don't need a new county jail or coroner's office. What I'm upset about is that now they need, $12 million or such, or whatever money. But I'm upset with the fact that if they need this money, and then they have these special funds where they're putting a lot of money in a coffer somewhere. You know, last year or beginning of this year, Ada County wrote a check and gave it to a private developer for a parking garage. It's $17 million. And they gave them this money. And CCDC is involved in that too. And then Ada County is going to pay rent for a portion of the parking of this private development indefinitely. Now, if Ada County's got property on both sides of the Ada County Courthouse, which they own, and then there's also a pie-shaped piece of property about a block away, which they own, why would they not want to build a new parking garage on any one of those pieces of property, which I have discussed with them? But no, they'd rather, in a certain way, go ahead and pay $17 million that they had stuck away. And they did this, around end of October or so, or just before the elections or after the elections, it was done. Now, why is it that now all of a sudden they need money when yet they had the money to begin with, but yet they pay for a private development, which this bothers me a lot.
What was their reaction when you put it to them?
There was just, well, we don't know. I said, why don't you just build it on either side? I didn't get an answer. It was kind of like, well, I don't know what the answer is to that. I mean, there are people who I've talked with, not with Ada County, who have said, well, they didn't want to do that because it was going to disrupt the beauty of the ambiance or whatever of their property, and they didn't want to put some high-story parking garage adjacent or contiguous to that Ada County Courthouse. I don't know if that's true or not, but this is kind of what is going on. So I follow these issues with taxes, and the same thing is going on with the city of Boise. Similar things that go on like this. But I'm very upset with the fact is that everyone wants their hand out. They want to raise taxes. They want to grab for taxes or however they want to go out and do it. But yet they have the money necessary to do the things that they intended to do initially, but they'd rather bankroll a private developer for a 4-story parking garage with attached condos or whatever. And then, the fact is that and adjacent to this new parking garage that's proposed, about a block away from that, between 2nd and 3rd and I think it's Front or Myrtle. There's a new apartment complex going to be going up. Well, parking is going to be needed for that. So it's kind of a twofold deal where, we need this, but we can't afford it. But if you do this for us, we'll give you some parking, and then we pay for it. And then we pay for rent. We don't even own it. We don't even own the parking garage, but yet the county is paying for the parking garage. Doesn't make sense. So I'm following it.
Gary, we appreciate it. Thank you for the insight. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. So back to the issue. If you're just tuning in on KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM, big meeting recently where people are concerned about their taxes going up to pay for jail expansion, to pay for a new coroner's office and a new second DMV in West Ada.
Worried that they will have to be forced out of their homes.
Mixed reaction Tuesday night from Ada County's taxpayers as they listen to the county's plans to try and collect something government calls foregone taxes. They are property taxes that the county could have collected in any given year, but practicing frugality did not. Those taxes can now be levied for projects the county deems necessary.
Does this sound like America to you? So unlike Canyon County, or I don't know if there's any other counties in the state that have the secret taxes. So in other words, it was foregone taxes, foregone conclusion, pay up everybody. This does not seem a way to run a local republic. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Let's go to Bonnie in Boise. Was at the meeting last night. Our intrepid reporter, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Bonnie.
Hi, Kevin. How are you?
Well, I can't wait to hear what you have to say about this.
Well, I wasn't impressed with the commissioners at all, to be quite honest. LaChionda and Kenyon, well, for the first place, she doesn't have her facts straight. I mean, she quoted, they're giving a 3.2% raise. Part of it is a COLA. And she claimed that inflation was 2.7%. And we all know that because the Fed's, it's under 2%. The Fed's just, didn't raise rates, and they didn't drop them because of certain factors, but they weren't worried about inflation. So it was interesting. They blamed the previous commissioners. They pointed out they're doing, these were identified years ago, and they just sat on it, that type of thing. So, I mean, they were patting themselves on the back a lot. And I can't say Rick Visser did anything. He's kind of bumbles along, and they definitely have some divisions there. But the two women dominate. It's, anyway, part of it is I was unimpressed with the sheriff.
Right.
Yeah, the sheriff really, I mean, he has all these, he's already designing his building. And I, as far as I know, that from what I could tell, they hadn't even given him the money to start. And he's looking for he wanted $1 million to buy his land. So he wants a new jail, and he's going to spread it out. He doesn't want to go up. Because that's more expensive, apparently, was what he thinks. And it was interesting. I mean, I've never heard that one before. I always thought going up was cheaper. But it's fascinating. And then the coroner's office, apparently it's supposed to be a place for mourning, and they need religious places for religion. Boy, I thought it was for bodies, for autopsies. Get them in, get them out, get it done properly. And they do need better, facilities. But there were only two people who spoke against it.
Only
Literally.
two people. Well, what do you make of these secret taxes?
Well, they're not secret because they're allowed to raise our taxes 3% a year. And so it's not secret. They just didn't take it for a couple years.
Well, that's good that they didn't take it, Bonnie. And then all of a sudden,
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree with you entirely. But then they have this foregone thing where the state allows them to go back and collect it.
Huh.
And so if we need to get rid of it, it's ridiculous. And apparently, now I don't know for sure, but Rick Visser stated that revenues in the last to 3 years, 4 years have gone up 40% for the county, their take of our dollar. Well, that's a lot. Where the heck did the money go?
It didn't go for the roads, that's for sure.
I don't know. But I don't think our sheriff is qualified to design and build a new facility. And besides, and I don't deny I said it, I said this isn't new. There's just jails all over the country, and many of them are new. Can't you take one of the designs and use that and develop it for your space? Same way with the coroner's office. I mean, they had these sob stories of people coming in and mourning and having no space for them at the coroner's office. That's not its job. Sorry. I mean, I'm not trying not to be cold, but I do know something about it. You go there to give what information they ask, sign papers, and, hope that the body's released as quickly as possible. So I don't know. I was very appalled. I didn't rest with, it wasn't the greatest, the board. They don't know how to make cuts. They turned to Rick Visser and said, can you cut? Well, we asked you to find cuts. It's like these two women can't read a budget. I didn't look for the items. So I'm just curious.
Apparently it looks like he works for them from the sounds of what you're saying.
Well, that's what they seem to think, if he's going to disagree with them.
Mm.
So I don't get it, to be quite honest. But, hey, if you're not going to go out to these meetings, it's not going to, go the right way. People
Bonnie,
need to hear what's going on.
And that's why we're here. Bonnie, thanks for showing up. Take care now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Wow, Bonnie laying the smackdown on the commissioners, the Democrats, the women. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio, traffic and weather together. Let's get you to work safely and on time. Good morning, Dave. And coming up next, well, the deficit is blowing up. It's big. It's bad. The economy's rolling, but seem to be charging more, at least as a country. I don't know how your personal finances are going, but the deficit is out of control. We'll talk to our friends from FreedomWorks about that, plus other news that is so relevant to you. Much more on the Ada County commissioners saying, we could have raised your taxes, but we didn't, and now we're going to. Is this really the right way to run a county government? Now, if they would have said, look, we're going to spend such and such and raise your taxes on the roads, maybe, but I guess that's ACHD. It's all so confusing. Couldn't they solve our problems instead of adding to them? That'd be a good one, wouldn't it? Well, you're a good one. We appreciate you. Kevin Miller, good morning, KIDO Talk Radio.